This evening, President Joe Biden drops out of the presidential race and endorses Vice President Harris just under 100 days before the election. Raising over a record-breaking $81 million last week, support for Harris as the Democratic nominee has re-energized her party and American voters. Plus, U.S. Senate candidate Mark Lamb joins us. This is Before You Vote. Welcome. I'm Mike Broomhead. In a historic decision, President Joe Biden has bowed out of the presidential election, and Vice President Kamala Harris is now the frontrunner to be the candidate in an unprecedented nomination process. Today, we're giving you an in-depth analysis of these latest developments. So with so much breaking news surrounding politics at the moment, let's get caught up on some of these stories that are local and national. First of all, let's start with the Secret Service Director, Dr. Kimberly Cheadle, resigning. After the assassination attempt of former President Trump in Pennsylvania, a lot of questions about how this possibly happened are out there. She testified before a congressional committee. She didn't have any answers. There were some that thought she just didn't know the answers and should have, but many thought she just refused to answer. So, and both sides of the political aisle really criticized her, and the day after that testimony, she decided she was going to step down. Now, here locally, 60 Arizona delegates now support the vice president to be the president of the United States. The question is, does the vice president have the time to convince swing state voters to go her way? We understand how it is in most of the states. She's ahead actually in one poll by 2 points nationally, but she has a lot of work to do in the swing states. Can she convince those voters on her record with the border and with the economy? Arizona is starting the new fiscal year with $400 million more than they expected. This is great news for the state with the budget crunch that they had. They cut over $1 billion out of the budget, but they have collected more money than they thought to start the fiscal year. This is good news going into the budget year. It's something to really watch in the future. Now stick around. What are Arizona's top political strategists saying about the biggest questions surrounding this presidential race? This is Before You Vote. We'll be back in exact 60 seconds. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Joining me is Chuck Coughlin and Stacy Pearson. Back to another conversation about what's going on this election cycle. But thanks for coming back in.
Is there things going on?
I thought we were talking about the weather.
We need to set you guys cots up here at the TV station. I want to start off and have a conversation about what happens now. President Biden has stepped aside. It looks as if the vice president is going to be the nominee. It looks like she has the delegates. But I want to start with you. I saw Black Lives Matter and a couple other organizations saying we need some kind of a primary process. Is there a danger of it being a little bit of a backlash to hand it off? Or do you think it's just that's the way it's going to be and it's going to be okay?
It's the way it's going to be and it's going to be okay. And she was shot out of a cannon last weekend. And for her to pull together the roster of support in the speed that she did is going to be a masterclass in how to launch a campaign.
But don't you think that, I mean, this isn't nefarious, but behind the scenes, with the anticipation of this happening, a lot of these wheels were in motion long before that decision was made?
Indeed. I think the wheels were in motion after the first debate. And folks saw the writing on the wall and didn't believe the president could recover and started to put this plan in motion. There was never a scenario in which the president would have dropped out of the race before the RNC, before they locked in their vice presidential candidate, before they all took shots at him.
Right.
From the stage in Milwaukee.
So let me ask you, and your chance once again for a victory lap, your push for an open primary. What does what we're watching unfold say, or what do you say to voters based on what you're seeing?
I mean, is anybody happy? I mean, are we all happy with the way everything's rolling out? This little convention of, 20, 30% of Republican primary voters choosing who our nominee is, and then having all the Democrats go to a primary through this farcical primary in order then to choose a guy who's not going to be your nominee. It's not working. It's just not working anymore. And so, I say go back to the old democratic capitalism, what's made America great. create a free enterprise system, let voters decide who they want to vote for.
I'm just really happy that Chuck Coughlin said "Make America Great" on my show.
It's funny because a lot of people say, you know, it's make elections fair, and they say make elections great again.
Okay,
You know?
fair, mega.
Okay. Yeah.
But the process, if somebody wants to challenge, what I've read is the way the process works because of the rule change. If somebody wants to challenge, they have to do it in writing up to a day before the convention. They have to have the support of 300 delegates
Right.
and no more than 50 delegates from one state, which means at least six states
Exactly.
worth.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it almost an impossibility.
It really does. It is virtually impossible. And who is going to be that turd in the punch bowl also? Who's going to challenge the current Vice President of the United States, the first black woman, the first woman, and who's brave enough or insane enough? I don't think there's anybody left on our bench to do that.
It's remarkable the speed at which this has happened. As Stacy alluded to earlier, they've executed extraordinarily well. Obama stayed out of it. Schumer stayed out of it. The Speaker stayed out of it. You know, she actually went and did the groundwork of getting all the governors, all the party officials, each state delegation. It wasn't one of these top-down coronations. It was a Democratic Party base up, which she's put together with remarkable speed.
And see, that's where, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds of what your proposal is on a ballot initiative,
Yeah.
but I think this is where the parties should be saying, listen, we have the right to choose our candidate the way we want to. You may not like it, but this is what we're doing. Had they not had that system here, this could have been chaos up to and including in the convention, correct?
Correct. And we saw that with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, right? And folks, lots of people from my team said the party's not being fair to Bernie Sanders. Well, he's not a member of the Democratic Party. The guy is a registered independent, and membership has its privileges. And so we're seeing that kind of play out now.
Well, it was interesting because I was in Tampa when Mitt Romney got the nomination. I don't know if either one of you were there, but there was a big uproar with the libertarians in the Republican Party. They were actually going to blockade the convention hall.
Yeah.
There was a big meeting and a discussion of how they were going to work that out, but eventually they did and tried to show some unity. But there was a lot of dysfunction with the day of the hurricane, when it was shut down the day of the hurricane. And there was a question about whether or not people are going to get into the venue. So it can happen on both sides.
It could,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Well, that's the nature of our party system today, absent an open and democratic process. All I'm saying is she managed that process extraordinarily well.
So, and that's, I guess, we're just about done here, is both of you agree then that this was the right decision for the Democrats and it was done in a way that was really commendable from your perspective.
You don't want 1968. I mean, you don't want the 68 Chicago Convention, which was a disaster. That was the year Kennedy was assassinated.
Yes.
They rolled in with a lot of competing factions, and it was not a organized affair. And so what they want to produce in Chicago is a springboard for Harris's nomination. You want to stick the landing and then go out from Chicago with all this momentum.
That's the conversation in the next segment. What happens now with the strategy on both sides? We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The conversation with Chuck Coughlin and Stacy Pearson continues after the break. How could Arizona be affected if Vice President Harris is the nominee? This is Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Having a conversation with Chuck Coughlin and Stacy Pearson about what happens next. Both of you are strategists. You've worked on Republican campaigns. You're a strategist for the Democrats. This changes the game for the Trump campaign because it's like having the second, not second string in a bad way, but another quarterback and not the starting quarterback in the game. But does the vice president have big hills to climb in convincing the American people she's ready to be president?
Oh, she has a huge hill to climb. But on social issues that we know are extraordinarily popular, she has the advantage. And by social issues, I mean very specifically abortion. I mean, the swing states, there are 3 swing states that will have an abortion measure on their November ballot. And I think she's going to be talking about that and a woman's right to control her own body at length.
Yeah, she's clearly got that down, and that's the narrative. That's what she's been running on. Where she needs to add to that is an interesting discussion. How do we add to that continuing contrast on the economy? How does she respond on the immigration charge, which he's going to try and hang everything around her? Can she do a jujitsu move with that and play his instrumental role in defeating Langford's bill in Congress? Is that a strategy that she can deploy? What is she going to do about Gaza? What is she going to do about projecting a role in the world of security? Because it's a pretty unstable place right now.
So was it a mistake from either one of you? Was it a mistake for her not to be there when Netanyahu spoke to the joint session?
I think she should have been there. I think it would have been very important. I think she's trying to stay out of the young pro-Palestine
Yeah,
mudslinging.
I get it.
Yeah, she is meeting with him, though.
They have a meeting.
They have a meeting, so I think she can legitimately say, that's theater. You know, that's a theater speech.
Which is what I was just, should she have been there?
Right.
I don't think it's going to alter the campaign.
No, but she can legitimately say, I had a conversation with him, I was honest, because I have concerns about where the state of Israel is, and I conveyed those thoughts to the prime minister.
Can either candidate have the discipline to speak to independent voters knowing that their base is solidly behind them?
I think she will be able to, because she's already begun to do that. She's already begun to talk about this is about the future, not the past. This is about American optimism and America's role in the world, not a third world nation. That whole narrative bugs me about that Trump owns.
Agreed.
About how bad our country is. I don't feel that way. I am very proud to be an American. I think we live in the greatest country on the planet, and we have a history of serving the rest of the world. And I think his narrative is more inward-looking. Her narrative is more outward-looking.
The issue with that, I think both sides do it, is the narrative, because I'm equally the idea that if Trump gets reelected, it's going to ruin our democracy and it's going to take our democracy away. I was the Republican saying Barack Obama is not going to ruin America, and 18 months after Donald Trump was president, my party was saying it's the greatest economy we've had in 50 years. So I think the narrative on both sides of a president is doomsday, is you're right, should end. But are they both going to message to the middle? Are they going to message to the independent voters that lean their way? Because don't you both think that's who's going to decide this?
Oh, it absolutely is. And particularly in Arizona. And you're talking about folks that moved here from California in the middle of COVID. They were lifelong Democrats. They bought a nice big McMansion in Peoria, and now they're registered independents. Those folks control everything.
I just don't think he can do it. And back to the discipline question. I think he is so married to this narrative about how bad the country is and how bad Biden is and how bad she is. He struggles trying to get over that hill to say anything good about the country. And I think he struggles with that because he wants to run a negative campaign, because a negative campaign, we all know, suppresses turnout. He does better with a low turnout campaign. She's going to do better with a high turnout campaign, with more younger people voting. So her objective will be to inspire. His objective is going to be to suppress.
Okay, so we all had a prediction, and it was you thought that Biden would win Arizona. I said Trump would win Arizona. We could both be wrong, all three be wrong.
Yeah.
A prediction. Do you believe the Arizona legislature, one chamber or both, flips? Yes or no?
At least a tie. At least a tie in one chamber and or flips.
I think it flips.
Both chambers or just one?
Just one.
Just one.
So I think a chamber flips, and I think we're seeing investments in these races like Arizona has never seen. I mean, there's a super PAC sitting on $12 million right now, and it is entirely designed to flip a chamber. And so people are really focused.
I love I could talk to you guys all day. I appreciate you. And you know I'm calling on you again before November because we're going to have to keep talking about this.
We probably need to come back before the primary because I've seen Democrats screw up a one-car funeral, too. So.
Well, that's the thing is I'm anxious to see how this all plays out for both parties and how we all feel when it's over.
Tuesday, it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah. All right, they are the best. Thank you again for doing this. We'll be right back. Coming up, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, Pinell County Sheriff Mark Lamb joins us to talk about why voters should elect him. This is Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. We reached out to all the Republican candidates running for U.S. Senate, and only Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb responded to our request to be interviewed. Here is just a portion of that interview. All right, speaking with Senate candidate Sheriff Mark Lamb from Pinal County. Mark, I appreciate this.
Thank you for having me on, Mike. I appreciate it as always.
I know that there's been a lot going on nationally, but this race it could quite well decide the balance of the Senate, who has control of the Senate. In these final days of the campaign, what is the message you're taking to voters in Arizona in this primary?
You know, look, one thing that we've had success with, Mike, is our message has stayed the same. That's what the voters want. I think they're tired of politics where the message changes based on where you go. So our message has been consistent the whole way along. Arizona needs a proven conservative leader and fighter. We need somebody with the right experience to deal with the border issue, which is the #1 issue in this country, which also happens to be the #1 national security threat to Americans. We also have the economy. You know, look, I've balanced a large budget. I've stayed within that budget. And then also crime is on the rise. And we've got a myriad of other things. And what people are looking for is a consistent message and somebody who represents their values of God, family, freedom in this country and the Constitution. And also that has proven to them who they are and what they will stand for.
When it comes to the border issue, we spoke to the Cochise County Sheriff recently about the numbers being down, was it 29% or whatever the number was in June, and he said he wasn't feeling that in his county, that it seemed to be kind of a numbers game. Are you seeing a difference in Pinal County in the number of crossers and interactions with people in the country illegally?
So one of the things that we experience in the Tucson sector, which is Pinal County, Pima County, Santa Cruz County, Cochise County, is we have the most gotaways through here, especially Cochise and coming up through Pima into Pinal County. We're on the Indian reservation, we see a lot of it. So what we feel and see is very different than what they feel and see. We're seeing 250 to 500 gotaways a day. Plus, those numbers, while they may have gone down, that's probably more due to the weather, the summer, which is typically when these numbers dip a little bit. So I think they were playing with the numbers. When Biden announced this, he knew we were going to be entering into these summer months. It went basically from about 7,500 a week in the Tucson sector down to about 5,000 a week in the Tucson sector. 5,000 is still a lot of people to deal with every week. And so, yeah, we're still feeling it. Every day down in Pinal and down in Cochise, we're still feeling the effects of it. So while the numbers may be down, I think because of the gotaways, which is usually who we deal with, we're still feeling it.
Let's talk about one area that I don't think we've really discussed, and that is how we reduce the deficits. If you go to the United States Senate, I just read a story today that Social Security is not as valuable as it used to be, that inflation has really dropped it to a point where people can't be sustained, but also the program itself within 10 years is going to be so out of money that they're going to have a mandatory 20% cut in benefits. When you see these kinds of things happen, what are the plans you have to try to do in the United States Senate to reduce our deficit and to start getting our budgets balanced?
Well, look, we spend money in our government. We send money all over the world as if we're flush with cash.
Now, to see the full interview, head over to cw7az.com. We'll be back. Hey, thanks for joining us this week. We hope you found our conversations around the presidential race insightful. Thank you to Chuck Coughlin and Stacy Pearson for joining us, and thank you to Sheriff Lamb as well. The primary election is Tuesday. To find your polling location, go to cw7az.com. We'll see you next week right here on Before You Vote. To help you this election season, head over to cw7arizona.com, check out your voter status, register to vote, as well as all other voter resources.